Okay, so today we're going to be talking about classification systems, and we're going to be really generalizing our notes from yesterday. We're going to be putting those notes together just a little bit better. So first, what we're going to do is watch a short video about classification.
Dear Tim and Moby, where do the scientific names for animals come from? From Esther. Scientists like to organize everything. It helps them understand what they're studying. Today, most biologists recognize 8 main levels of classification, also known as taxa. From least specific to most specific, they are domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. All living organisms are classified into different taxa based on their characteristics. The most general taxon is the domain. Every organism belongs to one of 3 domains: Eukarya, bacteria, or archaea. Well, the domain is a pretty new taxon. It was introduced in the 1990s. Before that, biologists considered the kingdom to be the highest taxon. The 6 recognized kingdoms are animals, plants, fungi, protists, eubacteria, and archaebacteria. A lot of people still use this way of dividing things. The domain system just groups 4 of the kingdoms together, while the other 2 are separated. Well, let's take the bottlenose dolphin as an example. If we were to classify this guy, we'd start with his domain. Righto, all eukaryotic organisms, those with complex cells that have a cell nucleus, fall under the domain Eukarya. So we'll put our friend in there to start. He's also in the kingdom Animalia, or animals. Now that's still a big category. All kinds of organisms, from cockroaches to sharks to elephants, fit into the animal kingdom. The next taxon down is the phylum. There are currently several dozen phyla in the animal kingdom. Bottlenose dolphins belong to the phylum Chordata, which includes all animals with spinal cords. And their class is Mammalia, or mammal, which includes animals that have hair, breathe air, and feed their young on milk. Right, each taxon down the list includes fewer and fewer distinct organisms until you get to the bottom level, species. Any 2 organisms that can breed and produce babies that are capable of breeding belong to the same species. Like, you couldn't breed a dog and a cat. Scientists generally call organisms by their genus, followed by the specific name or species. For the common bottlenose dolphin, that's Tursiops truncatus. This naming system is called binomial nomenclature. It was popularized in the 18th century by Carolus Linnaeus, a Swedish naturalist. Binomial means 2 names in Latin, and nomenclature just means any system for naming stuff. Yeah, names like Tursiops truncatus are a little weird sounding because they're all in Latin and Greek. But it's a useful system because it ensures we know exactly what animal we're talking about. Like, if you just said dolphin, you might mean any one of a bunch of different species. Plus, the word for dolphin is different in different languages, so someone from another country might not know what you're talking about. But Tursiops truncatus is recognized around the world to mean one specific species of dolphin, the common bottlenose. Since all genus names are unique, you can figure out an organism's family, order, class, phylum, and kingdom just from the binomial name. Actually, those are just the major divisions. Scientists use the prefixes super, sub, and infra to get an even finer level of classification. For instance, the binomial name for domestic dogs is Canis lupus, subspecies familiaris. The dingo, a kind of wild dog, is part of the same species, but belongs to a different subspecies, Canis lupus dingo. Me? Well, I'm a human, obviously. Humans belong to the domain Eukarya, kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Primates, family Hominidae, genus Homo, species Sapiens, and subspecies Sapiens. Phew. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, so now let's go into our notes. Yesterday we learned about this gentleman, and it said that in the verse it said something about Hater said he can't do it, but he made it all possible. So from 1707 to 1782, we have this gentleman who actually came up with this whole naming or classification of species, and his name is Linnaeus. His first name is Carolus, but just having Linnaeus is perfectly fine. And he's considered the father of taxonomy, which we remember that taxonomy is classification. So he set up the classification system to organize all living things into different categories based on their characteristics. The science of classification is called taxonomy. And you should have been able to come up with these things from yesterday's notes. Now, Linnaeus' system is used, it uses several different types of words. It uses Latin and Greek. So Latin and Greek words are used to describe each kind of organism because that's the universal language. Because at that time it was considered international and could be used and understood throughout the world. So that's something that we've just adapted and kept. So now giving us a better description. The classification system for living things is made up of 8 separate categories, with the broadest and general category being at the top. Because now we're going to do an inverted triangle, as opposed to yesterday we did a regular triangle where we had the very tip at the top and we broke it down like that. The more specific and narrow categories are towards the bottom of the system. So when we get a little bit further down in our notes, we'll notice that all living things are grouped by 3 domains, and they're classified. The 3 domains you have, one, you have the Eukarya, and the eukaryotes mean they have a nucleus and is multicellular. The other 2 domains is the eubacteria, or just bacteria, which is your true bacteria. And then you also have your archaebacteria, which is your ancient bacteria. Now basically what happens is, before classifying a species, you have to first put in a domain. Is it a multicellular organism that has a nucleus? If so, then we can move on to the different kingdoms. Or is it a bacteria, and what kind of bacteria is it? And then you can move on to the different kingdom, going all the way down to the species. So then when you look at the domain, once you identify the domain, then you identify the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Now something you can come up with an acronym for the beginning of these. Okay, so again, you can come up with a silly acronym for the KPCOFGS. and remember it. Maybe King Philip can only find green slippers. I don't know, that's something to help you remember the order um, after finding the domain. All right, so now let's do an example. So this example would be for me or for you. So your domain, you are a eukaryote. Why? Because you have a nucleus and you're multicellular. Your kingdom is Animalia, also known as the animal kingdom. Again, like they mentioned in the video, this kingdom is very large. This can include a whole host of animals. So we got to break it down even more. Your phylum is Chordae, meaning you have a spinal cord. But again, there's a lot of animals with the spinal cord, so we're not done. Your class is mammal. Why did it look like I spelled mammal incorrectly? But the mammal class is just a class where, it's spelled correct, but the mammal class is just a class where you breathe air and you're fed with milk from your mom. But this still includes a whole host of things. There's a lot of animals that have a spinal cord that breathe air and are fed with milk with their mother. So we still have to break it down a little bit more. Your order is primate. Your family, you belong to the Hominidae. Your genus is Homo, and your species is Sapien. So, remembering from yesterday, from the previous lesson, the last two words in each description are the specific name of an organism. Using two words to name an organism is called, should have been able to come up with binomial nomenclature. The first name, genus, is always capitalized, and the second is never capitalized. So, for example, the dog is Canis familiaris. A mountain lion would be Felis conclor. So your specific scientific name as a human would then be Homo sapien. All right. So now let's move on. Let's talk about some of these marine organisms that we encountered in the past. Now that we've classified some things, let's go ahead and talk about some of these marine organisms and how they've been classified. So if you turn your paper over to the back, we're going to look at these mollusks. What are mollusks? Well, their classification is they belong to the animal kingdom. Their phylum is the mollusca. And then they have certain classes. We have a bivalves class, a gastropod class, and a cephalopod class. So we're going to be looking at all three of these classes. Focus on here. Apologize for the... Alright, so you're going to be writing on the back of your notes. Again, we're going to be looking at the mollusk, which is in the animal kingdom. The phylum is the mollusca. And we're going to be looking at bivalves, gastropods, and cephalopods. So, we're going to watch a short video. I'm then going to be taking notes digitally, but you are going to be keeping notes on here. So, looking for this information in here, let's go ahead and watch the video.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't mean anything by that. Dear Tim and Moby, what's a mollusk? From Ben. Mollusks are soft-bodied invertebrates, or spineless animals that have a large muscular foot and a mantle. A mantle is a thin layer of skin covering the body. In most mollusks, the mantle produces a material that becomes a hard shell. Mollusks use their single foot to move around or stick to things. You can find them on land or in the water. Snails, clams, octopuses, squid, and slugs are all mollusks. Mollusks that live in the water have gills, just like fish. Land-dwelling mollusks breathe air, just like we do. And some mollusks have a radula, a little row of teeth to break up food. There are over 50,000 species of mollusks. Most of them fit into one of three categories: gastropods, bivalves, and cephalopods. Most gastropods, like snails and conches, have a single shell, and all of them move around on their muscular foot, using a secretion of mucus to glide across surfaces.
And there ain't nothing I can do about it.
No, don't be such a baby. Bivalves, like clams and oysters, have two shells to protect their soft bodies. Both bivalves and gastropods have an open circulatory system. That means they have no veins and arteries, just blood surrounding organs in their bodies. Cephalopods, like squids and octopuses, are the most complex mollusks. They have a closed circulatory system, just like ours. And their muscular foot is divided into many tentacles with suckers on them. Yeah, the squid and the octopus have a really cool propulsion system that lets them move quickly through the water. Water between the mantle and the internal organs is squeezed out the back of the animal, pushing it forward like a jet engine. Most octopuses can change color for camouflage. And they have highly developed brains, too. Well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it did mean something by that.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and get ready for our notes. Again, like I told you, mollusks are in the animal kingdom, which again, that's a whole host of kingdom. The phylum is Mollusca. So now we're talking about mollusks. But then we have a couple different classes: bivalves, gastropods, and cephalopods. And like I said, we are going to be looking at these organisms because we've already kind of studied them with our marine life, or life in the ocean. So let's go ahead and take a look. There's some general characteristics of a mollusk. And some of those general characteristics we're going to go ahead and jot down. They all have soft bodies, from the Latin word mollis and the Greek word molakos. This word actually means soft. Now, a couple of other pieces of information that we have about our mollusks. So we have the word of their name, or their phylum, actually means soft. Most have soft shells outside their body. Squids are the one mollusk that have an inner shell. Octopus and slugs do not have shells, so there are some exceptions to the rules. The body is covered with something called a mantle. They have various body systems like brains and eyes and things of that nature. They all require water to survive. Marine mollusks breathe using gills, but land mollusks breathe through their skin. So this is why they need to be moist. They have a foot, and that foot is called a pod. And they use that pod for movement. Mollusks are classified by where their feet are located on their body, except for bivalves. So we give them these classes because of where their feet are located. And then bivalves is the class they don't have a foot. All right, so let's move on. Bivalves. Now, the word bivalve, bi means two. Valves are things that open and shut. So that should be able to help you identify bivalves. Now, the mollusk is on the inside, but it's called a bivalve because it's covered by two, there you have that word bi, shelled or let's say two shells, hinged together. That's a valve. It's something that opens and closes. Some examples. You should be able to come up with bivalves. What are some things that you know that have two shells hinged together? You could come up with a clam, an oyster, even a scallop. Down below here you want to draw some examples. I'm going to show a few. Here's your clams, your oysters, and your scallops. If you need a moment to draw that, go ahead and pause the video, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. Our next type of mollusk, remember, they are classified by where their foot is. Remember, bivalves don't have feet, so they're called bivalves because they're two hinges together, two valves. Our next one is our gastropod. Well, gastro means stomach, and I just told you pod means foot. So they're classified by where their foot is. Where do you think their foot is? Gastropod. This means stomach, foot. So they have a muscular foot, and they crawl on their belly or their stomach. That's where their foot is, so that's how they move. Some examples, as you know, would be snails, slugs, like Gary. So you want to go ahead and draw some examples, which you have there. I'm going to move on. If you need time drawing, then pause the video. Then we have something called a cephalopod. Now, cephalon means head. Pod is foot. So therefore, this would mean head, foot. So their foot is located on their head. So they have feet divided into tentacles, and it's attached to their head. Therefore, again, head, foot. They move from their head. They have well-developed eyes. They have tentacles, which have suction cups for grasping and holding objects. They have a mouth for taking in food. And they have a mantle that covers their body. Some examples would be things like an octopus and a squid. These are cephalopods. There are about 266 different species of squid. And you want to go ahead and draw an example. Notice how different they look, but they're still cephalopods. If you need a moment to draw, then pause the video, but I'm going to move on and let's take a look at a video about cephalopods.
From the coasts of Maine to the tip of East Asia, squids are found all over the world. Squids are sometimes caught in fishing nets, and occasionally they wash ashore. But most times, these animals can be found lurking underwater, waiting for their prey. Squids are part of an animal group called mollusks. While most mollusks have hard outer shells, squids do not. But squids do have a hard shell buried inside the animal's body. The lack of a hard shell is not the only feature that makes squids unique among mollusks. These animals also have 10 tentacles, 8 for movement, and 2 long tentacles used for grabbing prey.
Squids are voracious carnivores. These are predators that actively pursue prey, and so they've evolved adaptations to be very excellent at doing so. For example, they have arms and tentacles and eyes and the brain and the musculature to chase prey of a wide size range, detect them, and get them very efficiently.
Once a squid has caught prey, it cuts the food item into pieces with the help of its strong, beak-like jaws, and then begins to devour it whole. Squids can range in size from 1.5 centimeters long to more than 20 meters. Small squids are easy to find, but some scientists are searching for a living specimen of a giant squid. Even today, sailors tell stories about giant squids, deadly predators of the ocean's depths. No one has ever seen a giant squid alive, even though the bodies of these massive creatures have been found. Today, scientists are studying smaller squids in order to better understand these elusive undersea giants. But the giant squid is still little more than a myth. Only time will tell if scientists will ever find a living giant squid. In what ways do squids use their tentacles?
Alright, so having that information about squids, we want to take a look at our next slide. We want to be able to name 2 similarities between an octopus and a squid, and 1 difference between an octopus and a squid. Keep in mind the information you gathered from the first video, and now let's take a look at another video about these cephalopods and see what it is that you can come up with.
watch this segment, think about the adaptations that make octopuses well suited to their habitat. What has 8 arms, a large head, and can change color in an instant? An octopus. These marine animals are closely related to squids. But there's an important difference between octopuses and squids. While squids have an internal shell that helps give the body shape and protection, octopuses have no shell. Without a shell, octopuses can squeeze into small places where they can hide from predators or capture prey. Octopuses and squids are both able to move about by a kind of jet propulsion. Octopuses can forcibly expel water from their bodies, propelling them in the opposite direction in abrupt jet-like motions. They also have powerful arms, or tentacles. Octopuses can use their arms to move along the ocean floor in search of food. Suckers located on the underside of the tentacles enable octopuses to capture prey in their environment. In some ways, the suckers work like human fingers. Octopuses can feel their way around as they move along the ocean floor. The suckers enable the octopus to be able to tell the difference between a stone and a crab dinner. The suckers are very sensitive to touch and pressure, and can even detect biochemical changes in the immediate environment, in much the same way that our taste buds do. This happens through tiny hair-like structures in the suckers that are able to detect biochemical changes. In this way, octopuses literally get a taste of their surroundings. In some cases, octopuses may actually taste food, such as crabs, before they actually touch them. Octopuses are highly efficient predators. In addition, scientists are learning how clever these animals are. Octopuses have large brains and a nervous system that is among the most complex of any invertebrate. Octopuses even set traps for their prey and hide from predators.
When they go in their dens, they pull rocks and objects in front of the opening to block off and make themselves feel safer. And some people have argued that this is a sort of tool use, using objects to protect themselves, and therefore it's a sign that octopuses are intelligent.
To learn more about the intelligence of octopuses, scientists have brought the animals into the laboratory to study. In one experiment, they investigate whether an octopus can open a jar to get the crab inside. After many attempts, this octopus is able to do it. Researchers have also learned that octopuses are very clever at escaping from their tanks. Because they have no shell or spine, they can fit through spaces not much larger than their eyes. This adaptation is vital in an environment where being seen can be dangerous. Octopuses and squids belong to the same species. Though they have similar traits, these animals have their differences too. But whether large or small, hard-shelled or soft, squids and octopuses are masters of survival. How do octopuses move quickly through the water?
Alright, so 2 similarities that you should have been able to come up with, and these are just some. You may have more than the 2 that I'm coming up with, but they both are mollusks. They're cephalopods. Found in ocean. They could visit the benthic zone. We know that they are masters of the skies, masters of moving. They use jet propulsion, all of that great stuff. You can add more things. One difference between a squid and an octopus. Octopus, octo. So it has 8 limbs, or 8 tentacles. A squid has 8 tentacles, but 2 arms. Or I should say, 8 arms and 2 tentacles. And their tentacles are much longer than their arms, and they are used to capture prey and then bring it into their mouth. So this concludes this lesson.